Nani?
Wow! Okay.
Let me in. Let me in.
With Cantarella coming real soon, I will be too. No, but for real, I think now would be the appropriate time to discuss where the Fisalias are at this moment. I will say that as of right now, the amount of information is extremely sparse, and also one-sided with the 2.0 story, but there are some interesting things that I think should be talked about. The main thing revolves around the founding of Rinascita and Ragunna, so we'll touch on that first. Then I'll do my best to what I think the timeline would be, assuming these things are relatively true as broader ideas. I'll add on some of the other little tidbits that are commonly associated with Fisalias 2 and some other somewhat miscellaneous things. I think there's 100% something bigger regarding the Fisalias and real life stuff too. However, for that I want to wait a bit more, since with 2.2 coming really soon, I may end up getting more information. As per usual though, timestamps will be here for you. I'll touch on some of the importance or real life ties too, but this is mostly just getting out the Fisalian perspective, limited as it may be. Let's start with the founding of Rinascita, and there's two different stories on it, both weaving in and out of each other where things align and other parts kind of don't due to omissions or phrasings. One of the things we first learn upon entering Ragunna, besides the odd cultish religious tendencies, is a brief history of how Rinascita came to be. Hell, even before that, we learn about it from the note on the box in the Black Shores near Alto's totally not small and actually huge boat, which I hope we pay back to him soon. Starting with the Bloomberg report first, we learn from the Black Shore intel that the first inhabitants of Rinascita were refugees displaced by the wave-worn disasters. The Sentinel led them to what is now Rinascita, and the people were of varying cultures and very diverse. The speculation from Aristo, the author of this report, was that to create cohesion and easier navigation for this new civilization, they created a mono-faith-based system. That means combining the religious aspect and the governance aspect. This is further reinforced by Phoebes early on in 2.0 during the time when we get to the Genesis Nexus, laying out the common knowledge of the legend of Rinascita's founding. The interesting thing about this too is that this little cutscene would align with when Cetus was guiding them around the Riccioli Islands, up until the lighthouses were used to enlighten it, turning Cetus into the guardian of the ocean. So, the common legend given out by the Order and current residing power structure is one that lays out diverse displaced refugees looking for land because of the Lament, guidance by both the light of the Nexus and influence of Imperator on their ships during treacherous waters to an unnamed land which is now Ragunna. Upon reaching this land, they were met with the Genesis Nexus and were given the power of echo utilization and then began to make their lives among the islands. Sounds about right, but what's the other side? Well, the other side of this story is familiar, yet adds more context and omitted pieces of history. Part of it comes largely from the Transgressor's transcript written by someone of the Fisalian family. There, they give us more history from even before the founding of Ragunna. Keep in mind, Rinascita and Ragunna, two different things. Rinascita is the entirety of the area and Ragunna is one of the city-states. Anyways, what's the context that is given? Well, long before the founding of Ragunna, the seas of Rinascita were named as the Realm of 1,000 Islands. Remember this. It hints that the Fisalias have been around for a long time, as they were very adept in the ways of the ocean, which I would assume means the navigation, use, and knowledge of the seas in a multitude of ways. This is also backed up by their knowledge of the Giant One, which has been in the ocean for ages. The Giant One's blessing, however, stirs question in the mind due to the differing miracles that don't match with what was done in the past by the Giant One. However, I'll touch on this aspect a bit more later. But have you ever wondered how they even rode the seas in the first place? Where did the boats come from and who made them? According to this, the Fisalias did, or at least were a major player in doing so, as from the writings the implication was that there were others there, but the Fisalia family was one of the main players. In fact, you could potentially assume that there were 5 tribes that we know of according to the Ragunese essay and the old epic known as the Golden Bough, which is based off of a real comparative analysis of religion. In this lore essay it states, "The epic begins with pastoral plays that draw on the primitive beliefs and customs of various tribes during the Age of 1,000 Islands. As this story unfolds, these diverse narratives converge under the guidance of Sentinel Imperator. It then moves on to a commendable scene where it outlines the 5 storylines, which I would interpret as the 5 stories of the various tribes during the Age of 1,000 Islands, which, remember, was the old name for Rinascita. Quote, 5 storylines dramatically converge at the climax of the Carnival: the Holy Forest of the Fisalian Peninsula, the Order of Ragunna, the Keepers of Secrets in Thesseleo Fells, the successor of the Governor in Septimont, and the Gladiators, all merging in a grand finale. If this early epic writing is indeed a true plucking of history told through dramatization, then that means there's still other tribes who could give more context. This could either disprove, coincide, or add more context for how and why things unfolded badly for the Fisalian power structure of old. The ones that could shake or give more context would be the Fisalian Peninsula, successor of the Governor in Septimont, and the Gladiators. But here, the Fisalias are one of the founders of the Ark embarkation towards new settlements, meaning the Fisalias have always had a presence and, more importantly, power. Speaking of power, remember how Aristo said the thing about a mono-faith system to help with stability of a new civilization? Well, the Fisalias are the ones that laid groundwork for the Order as well, meaning that mono-faith system mentioned in the Bloomberg report. From doing this, the believers in this faith grew, and so did the Fisalian stability and family power as an upcoming center for power. The Fisalias were the original Ragunese rulers, and the Fisalias were the ones who created the Order of the Deep. This makes sense considering the name and everything that I've laid out. Not only that, it also makes sense too that some Fisalians and the current day Order of the Deep are aligned in the 2.0 story. If you knew the origins from this document beforehand, the covert alignment mentioned by Carlotta in the Montelli Keepsafe scene would make this alignment to you as a player about as covert as a white man's receding hairline. However, if you keep reading the Transgressor's transcript, you will soon learn that back in those early days, the deceit took hold on the Fisalian rule. The earliest mentionings of this oddity and beginning of decline would be with the run-ins with local fishermen speaking about the blessing from the Giant One. There it is. There's an innuendo there, but I won't speak on it. The Giant One was known for ages according to this, but the fishermen of that time were receiving miracles, and that's odd because it doesn't match with the miracles of the past from the Giant One. This kicked off the fishermen and common folk placing spiritual faith in this potentially false godlike entity. It would also be seen then too as moving away from the Fisalian deep sea faith. Quote, so what was the true form of the Giant One the people had placed their faith in? And what exactly was the true object of our devotion? This mysterious faith was quietly reshaping the history of Ragunna, and it even threatened our family's control over the Order of the Deep. It brings into question, what was the difference? Where did this one come from? Is this the true Giant One? And were these miracles used as malicious ways of rooting the spiritual plague of Ragunna? Was this the beginning of the Black Mist corruption making itself known in this old Ragunna? We will have to wait and find out, but if this is all true, it can be said that this could have been the main beginnings of the Fisalian decline. This new faith morphed and co-opted their original Fisalian one, manipulating common folk, infesting the young Order of the Deep, and silencing family members within. It was a quiet overturn of Fisalian power, and not long after Naploi II's death, the Fisalias became fractured and divided. From that division, the now corrupted Order overtook command and ended up becoming the main power structure which we see in today's Ragunna. So, what is the timeline looking like? In an attempt to tie these two versions together, assuming all is relatively true, here's how I understand things in a chronological order. Back in ancient times, there were people from one bundle of islands. At least 5 tribes of people, with the Fisalias being significant among them, as they were responsible for the Ark embarkation, due to their long tradition of understanding the ins and outs of the realm of 1,000 islands. With hopes of finding new land, the Fisalias organized the Ark and set out. They and the 4 other tribes were refugees looking for new land as the lament forced their movement from their original homes. They sailed the tempestuous seas thanks to Cetus's old unenlightened ways, and were eventually met with a light in the distance guiding them. This could have been the first lighthouse we see in Ragunna or the Genesis Nexus. Regardless, this was Imperator guiding them to the land, and upon the meeting of this land, they were imbued with echo knowledge. I also would like to add as potential speculation that upon the lighting of this lighthouse, this could have also kicked off the old Riccioli lighthouse's lighting as well, quelling the seas by enlightening Cetus as told to us in 2.1. But anyways, as a budding and ever-shifting civilization, stability was needed. So the Fisalias took up the task of creating a combined system of religion and governance in homage to their deep-sea faith and marine divinity, the Order of the Deep. This then kicked off the Fisalian rise and rule over the newly founded Ragunna as the original Ragunese rulers. As time went on, another belief system slyly spread among the people through small miracles given to the fishermen. This led to the conflating of 2 divinities, one which we don't know the name of, and the giant one. It was from this mistaking of divinity that eventually led to a decline of Fisalian rule. The changing of proverbs and passages, the morphing of iconography and statues of worship, and I can imagine the poisonous rumors accusing heresy to further discredit their ways. Once Naploi II died from the Dark Tide, this eventually led to the near full shattering of the Fisalias. People left their faith, members inside the family were kept quiet, and the Order of the Deep soon supplanted the Fisalia family. It wasn't long after that that the new order began to fully take control, and thus rose to be the beguiling new faces of faithful commandment. So that's how I would place things, as that's what makes the most sense to me. As an aside to the history, there are other things that you may find interesting too about the Fisalias. You can find these things in the Ragunna of current day, as well as cool references from real life. To get the real life stuff out of the way first, Fisalia design-wise looks to be inspired off of the real life Fisalia marine life. These aren't actually jellyfish, but Siphonophora, and are known more commonly by their colloquial name, man-o'-war. They are very deadly to fish and potentially to humans if you are stung by them. This is due to their venom, which they do by capturing them with their tentacles, stinging them to paralyze them, and lastly digesting them by spreading over their bodies. But you know, I don't mind this Fisalia devouring me. Speaking of this red flag of a Fisalian, Cantarella as a name is inspired off of the poison that was allegedly used by the Borgia family back in the mid-1400s. It was apparently pleasant to taste according to Wikipedia, and this academic article discussing the toxicology of Cantarella, said to taste like sugar. This would explain why we see cake in the teaser images from Kuro as well as in Cantarella Showcase. Since we're on the Borgia family too, the community notes out that the Borgia and the Fisalias are supposed to be parallels to each other, which I find to be plausible because of the apparent link to power and corruption of both of these families, as well as their use of poisons for killing political oppositions. Cantarella, the poison, was the most famous of these violent accolades due to its unknown composition and legendary status among the annals of history. As for the miscellaneous things, one of the bigger ones can be found in Carlotta's Experience tab, where it outlines a meeting and deadly dance between a Fisalia. She does get poisoned by them, but naturally survives. This brings into question which kind of Fisalia this was due to the aforementioned fractioning of their family. My bet is that this is one of the Fisalias working with the Order, formed from the fall of the original family, hence this quote here vying for continuing the status quo for the Order. Some pointed out that this may have been Cantarella, but I personally don't buy it because of the seemingly sloppy nature of this encounter, along with my guess that Cantarella is not part of the current Ragunna Fisalian Order. Additionally, when you explore around, you can find this child here plagued by nightmares of a creature. This is in reference to this part of the Transgressor's script where it says, many members of the Fisalia family were tormented by strange nightmares. They all saw the giant fish shadow beneath the sea and awoke in terror screaming. This little girl here seems to be wrapped in the dark mist, again referencing the same document here. But we see this in-game referred to as the Dark Tide as a wave-worn effect, but additionally maybe hinting at what this spiritual plague is that was mentioned to us by the Wooly character during one of the Somme Noir events. You can also see another person affected by the Dark Tide effect when you go up to the north wing of the Order's facilities. You learn that they actually came into contact with the Phantom Pain terminal near Thesseleo Fells. And of course, last but not least, you learn a lot in Thesseleo Fells, as it naturally is the place where Porto Veno Castle lies, which is the dwelling of the Fisalias and the back-breaking baddie known as Cantarella, the current head of the Fisalias. But the important part lies in the quest you do in this area where you enter each of these towers due to exiles looking for someone. By the way, spoilers if you didn't do this yet, so yeah. But you learn in the tower that there's a giant thorned crown in it. While unsure, the theory from it is that it was used as a device for controlling echoes at a large scale. I'd assume that from us breaking this device, it released the frequencies it was trying to take in, thus freeing those ghostly fish we saw in the cutscene. But this also makes sense too if you remember that this same thing is used as a way to control other echoes, as I have pointed out with echoes like LaGuardia or the Dragon of Dirge. Wow, this was longer than I thought. Of course, some of this is speculative, considering in the Transgressor's transcript it has redacted parts which make things unclear. Could it be the Leviathan? Could it be Cetus? Could it be the Overlord Squid, which I'm leaning more towards now after seeing Cantarella's trailer? Could it be something else entirely? I don't have the answers, and I don't know. I really have no fucking idea. I genuinely would want to say that their original deep sea faith was to the Overlord Squid, or that the giant one is the Overlord Squid, but I just don't fucking know, man. Your guess is as good as mine. But in any case though, I hope you're excited for 2.2 and this gave you more insight on who and what the Fisalias are. If you have any other info or additions or whatever else, I'd love to hear it. Of course, I appreciate you. Thank you for letting me take your time, and be safe out there. Enjoy 2.2.